So many have served in so many roles. For them in war, the bell too often tolls. Respect and equality have been hard fought. Their memory will not be left to rot. They stand together, true and loyal. Intolerance and injustice, determined to foil. Our servicewomen deserve our thanks, whether auxiliary, officer, or ranks. Hearts of gold and cores of steel, these women exist, they are real. They stand alongside our brave men, their country resolutely to defend. From World War I to present day, prepared, if needed, their lives to lay. Let us not forget the women who serve, and vow their memory to preserve. Women have had a rich history in the armed forces for 100 years. During World War I, members of Women's Royal Navy Service and Women's Army Auxiliary Corps worked on stations for Royal Flying Corps and Royal Naval Air Service. A decision was made to merge the two, and with concern of losing their specialised female workforce, they then formed Women's Royal Air Force on 1st of April 1918. In 1939, with prompt of World War II, Women's Auxiliary Air Force was formed. In 1994, this was disbanded again upon merge with the RAF. Increasing numbers of women were a part of operations and not just ground trades.
I joined up in September 1983 and did 3 years until I got pregnant with my son, your brother, and had to come out because at that time you could only stay in until you were 16 weeks pregnant. Well, I managed to get an extra 7 weeks out of them because I was 23 weeks pregnant by the time I came out, because I was quite late finding out. Didn't really want to come out, so when they changed the rules in the early 1990s, I went back in and did another 6 years, finally coming out when you were born in 1997.
8th of April 1988.
I joined in January 1941.
And why did you join?
I don't really know, to be honest. Partly probably escape, partly just because it was difficult. I wanted to leave home. I wanted to leave home, and there wasn't really. I was trained to be a hairdresser, and there's no way I could have afforded a flat and to live on an apprentice hairdresser's wages, or when I was at college. So I didn't get a grant or anything like that, so I couldn't have afforded to leave home. And then my pal and I were bunking off college one day, and it was raining, and the bloke sitting in the careers office, the RAF careers office, was quite good looking, so we went in for a nosy. He spoke to us and showed us loads of brochures and stuff like that, and it sounded really exciting, and the idea of men in uniform and all that kind of thing. And so I went away and filled in the forms and applied to join. It took a wee while though, because I had to have surgery on my knee. I had a dodgy knee, so I had to have surgery on that. So it was September by the time I passed the medical and got to go in. And,
I joined the RAF because it gave an opportunity outside where I come from, which was basically just mill towns or working in factories or farming, and university wasn't really an option back in the day, so the RAF offered me opportunities to travel and learn a trade.
I went home one day and said, "Oh, I'm glad to join the Air Force." I don't know that my dad was very happy to start with, but once I was actually in, then he was quite, I think he was proud. I don't think he ever told me he was proud, but I think he was. Mum was quite accepting of it. She was just like, well, that's what you want to do, off you go and do it. So off I went, just went to the basic training, and then travelled all around the world. I went to Wales, and then Lookers, and then Suffolk. So didn't get the most exciting postings.
They didn't really say much at the time. They didn't think I would handle the sort of discipline side of things, because I'm not known for taking orders. They were just like, it was my decision, and they sort of dropped me off at the train station, and there you go.
8233 276.
23779. You are a number. it's used for everything. So.
You had to say it so often, and it was, I suppose it became your identity. You know, when you went to get paid in basic training, you had to march up to the pay desk and give your your surname and service number, and they would hand you over your wages during basic training before it was set up to directly go into your bank. So right from then, when you went to stores to get your uniform, when you went anywhere, you had to give your service number, and it was the one thing that you would be allowed to give if you were ever captured. I had a blast. I absolutely loved it. Just loved the whole life, everything about it. So no regrets.
No.
Why?
I was in just over 23 years. People I met, the places I've seen, the jobs I've done, it was never 2 days the same. It was just fantastic experience, and I'd recommend it to anyone.
Protected rather than controlled, I think. Certainly when we were young, because most of us girls anyway, I think, had gone straight from living at home to being in barracks, and so we had, in a lot of ways, we had more freedom than we did at home, but we still were getting fed, and the bills were still paid, because everything was taken out of your wages before you got them. So yeah, there were a lot of rules and regulations, but as girls, certainly when I joined up, there were a lot of rules and regulations at home anyway. So if you were over 18, when you weren't on duty, after basic training, when you weren't on duty, then your time was your own. You could come and go as you pleased. Yeah, there were rules about not having blokes in the block and that kind of thing, but as long as you didn't get caught, it's all good. When we were in basic training, yeah, you were really controlled, but I think we were too tired most of the time to worry about that very much. You were up, you got up to a tannoy, you went for food when you were told, you cleaned your shoes when you were told, you made your bed, you made bed packs, we made bed packs, and your wardrobe and everything had to be everything laid out exactly. When we had kit inspections, it had to be laid out according to a diagram. So yeah, during that 6 weeks we were very much controlled. When we went to trade training, it was a little bit less, and then when we went on to our permanent units, it was nothing like that. Yes, there were still inspections, but not that many.
There's ways of working within the rules. It was a game of cat and mouse, really, I think, between your bosses and yourselves, try to figure out how to bend the rules, shall we say.
When I joined up, there was still part of the Cold War, so we had a lot of big exercises where you would be called out in the middle of the night, and that kind of thing, because we were still not at war, but prepared for war, and also it was kind of still at the height of the troubles in Northern Ireland, so we felt the effects of that on the mainland. There was bombings in London, so security was really tight. And then when I did my second stint, it was the war in the Gulf, in Iraq, and then laterally, I suppose, in the lead up to Afghanistan. I wasn't directly involved in any of them. I was never stationed out there. I was never detached out there, but in the job I did, I saw a lot of the information, and a lot of it was pretty rough to read. But so there were big events, but they were part of the job, and you just dealt with them. You didn't let them kind of overshadow your whole life. Yes, we took security seriously, and you checked under your cars, you didn't go out wearing uniform off the base, things like that. You were careful about where you went, but mostly you just got on with it. We knew that was what we joined up for.
Joined up, it was still the Cold War, so that was sort of what we were trained for at the time. The first major thing that happened was Gulf War I. and then obviously there was the Balkans, Gulf War II, and then all the Afghanistan sort of side of things ramped up. So yeah, there was constant events operationally that way. That's doing the job, so that made you feel worthwhile, and you were valued as a part of the larger machine.
Trade was TCO, telecommunications operator, which meant I worked both on the switchboard and in the communications centre, dealing with all the signals traffic, so you saw everything, all the information that came on and off the station, both to do with the RAF in general and international situation, I suppose, in general, but also stuff about everybody in the unit. So when people were being posted or anything like that, we saw that information. So it's quite a good job if you're nosy. I think email and secure email and that kind of thing has overtaken it. It doesn't exist in the same way. I think there are still TCOs still serving, but their job has moved on. They have a different role now than I had.
Well, it changed names several times whilst it was in, but I ended up, it was electronics engineering. Space technicians now, but I'm not sure. It's trade group 4 as such, whereas I was trade group 3 when I joined.
Too old to go back in now anyway, but yeah, there's nothing for me to go back to. It's it's part of my life that's definitely finished. Which is it's a little bit odd. It's an odd feeling. It's not that I don't dwell on it. I have a perfectly good job now teaching, but yeah, I can't be called upon in an emergency or whatever to go save the country. I just have to carry on teaching. I'd quite like to fly helicopters. I quite liked going up in helicopters, which I got to do occasionally. But no, there's not another job I would have wanted to do. I wouldn't have been. Air traffic always sounded glamorous, but there's too much responsibility. Making sure the planes landed safely and that we didn't crash in mid-air and stuff like that.
Are you good at sewing? I said, oh yes, I'm very good at sewing. And he said, oh well, he said, you can be a fabric worker. Well, I hadn't a clue what that was. But this was to repair the balloons.
Alright.
You'll not know what the barrage balloons were like. You'll not know either.
I've seen pictures, but
At Bishopbriggs there was 3 huge hangars, and the balloons, and when they were brought down on the balloon sites, there was balloon sites all over, and this was to prevent any aircraft, you see, and when the balloons were brought down, if they were torn, and they were deflated, they were brought into the centre, and you had to inflate them, the big machine that inflated the balloon. And I mean, it was the size of the hangar, if you could visualise the size of a hangar. And then you had to go inside, and if the balloon had been brought down over the sea, it was full of fish. So you had to take your bucket in with you to bring out all the dead fish.
loads of memories, most of them not appropriate to tell you. But I guess one that sticks in my mind is that when I was quite young and silly, and there was a young lad in our section who was always winding everybody up. And this particular day he'd gone out of the section, so I thought, right, but he comes back and I'm going to really give him a fright. So I heard him coming back, so we had a combination lock, so it rattled, the whole door rattled when somebody was coming in, so I heard him, went and hid behind the door, and as he came out I just went, "Wah!" right in his face, except it wasn't him, it was my flight sergeant, who had a pacemaker, and he did that stereotypical, really got fright and went back against the wall in total panic, and I just couldn't stop laughing. laughing, couldn't stop laughing. I really thought I was going to be in trouble for it, but he was alright. I spent a good couple of hours really scared that he was either going to die and I was going to be responsible for it, or that I was going to be really seriously in trouble for it.
So I got a month's sick leave, and it was lovely because I was at Kirkcaldy and I was able to wear. I had no coupons, of course, you see, but I had clothes that I'd had before I joined up, and I used to go to Bishop Briggs to meet the girls, and they were all envious because they would come out in their uniform and these blooming gas masks. But what we used to do, we used to take our gas mask out of our haversack and put your makeup and things like that. And we never carried our gas mask. No, they were under the bed or something. They were great for carrying. They were just like handbags, you see, but they were canvas. They weren't very elegant, but it held all your makeup and stuff.
I couldn't pin one down. There's so many memories. Every posting, I was lucky. I don't know whether it was just the people I met. Well, 80% of the job was the people I met, but every posting had something special about it, and some really daft stories as well, but we won't go into that.
Generally kind of, I don't know, working with some great people, having a great social life, that sort of thing. Just, yeah, but all a bit blurry because there was a lot of alcohol involved, so.
My second duties, there were many and varied. I was sort of like secretary of the rugby club, helped out on a lot of charities, did a lot of sports events for charity, stuff that I would never have done unless it was mostly time off work. There was anything really that you were advised to do. So
when I was my first stint, I did, I was duties, not security, duty person in the NAFIs, and you had to make sure it was all, the NAFI was the bar, you had to make sure it was all locked up and everybody was out last thing at night, so that was quite fun. You got to throw all big blokes out, sometimes physically throw them out into the car park, make sure it was all locked up and secure, and yeah, so I did that. And then when I was in the second time, I did bar duty in the families clubs. I actually worked the bar in the families club, and that was really good because even when you weren't out socialising, you were still socialising because everybody you knew came in, and it was like a proper old-fashioned social club. And you know, whole families came down. There was a park at the back of the club, so the kids were out playing out there, and it was a really safe environment. And then, you know, there were 2 big rooms and with functions in there and all sorts. And it was, yeah, I liked that duty as well. I did that for about 3 years. Really, really enjoyed it.
Definitely the friends I've made, the teamwork, camaraderie. You can't fault it, and that still goes on to this day. The people I met in the RAF will remain my friends for the rest of my days.
Friends, definitely friends, and just the camaraderie, I think. And I mean, there's still a huge group of us that are in various online social media groups and things like that. And it's a particular sense of humour, a particular approach to life, I think, that we all share and that you miss, because when you come out, you don't just lose your job, you lose your accommodation, you lose your friends, because you know, everybody moves about all the time, so it's like going from one life to another life entirely. So being able to keep in touch with people that you served with, and sometimes people that you didn't but that served the same life, that was definitely the best thing. It's like a whole community, and so yeah, that's definitely without a doubt the best thing. Well, I suppose I gained my 2 children as well. That's pretty cool. They're alright.
December 1945, that was when I was demobbed, and a lot of the girls that had been conscripted after me they got out before me, because if you were married, didn't matter, suppose you'd only been in a fortnight, the married woman got out first, you see, and I was one of the last to get out. And then I had to go from East Fortune back to Birmingham, to Withall, to be demobbed. And from there we were told we could have a railway warrant to go anywhere we wanted. So I took mine to Bristol, and I went and stayed with relatives for a week. I wanted home for Christmas, but I stayed with my cousins in Bristol for a week, and back to Kirkcaldy.
You didn't have to, but we got the option to change to be to carry arms and to do our arms training and all the rest of it, which I did. Yeah, I think today there's no discrimination in other walks of life, and there shouldn't be in the forces. And I think if you join up knowing that you might have to go out to the front line, that you might have to serve your country, you know, in a war situation. So yeah, I don't really see a problem with it now. I can see why there were issues in the past, because when I joined up, women still, there wasn't proper equality, you know, in civilian life, and it was still very much that men were in the protector role and women were to be protected. And that, I mean, that might sound like it was quite sexist here, maybe it was, but that's the way it was. And that would translate into a battlefield. Men would feel that they had to give extra protection to women at that time. But things have changed, and for the most part, men don't view us like that anymore. So, you know, they view you as somebody, you know, as a colleague and able to do your job as well as them. And yeah, there's still banter and still jokes and all the rest of it, but that's all it is. It's not, you know, it's just banter. So yeah, I think that women should be able to do every job that men do, and that includes going to the front line.
Well, I couldn't really understand why it said we were never on the front line. A lot of people were on the medics. Women since the beginning of time have been on the front line, in not semi-officially, I would say. So, you know, there was the spies dropped into France, etc. during the war. So they've always been there, but just not officially, whereas now you can join up straight into a standard regiment and serve on the front line. So there was many people went before us to pave the way to get to this stage, so here's hoping it works well.
That women in the forces generally, but especially in the Air Force, their role has been very much undervalued over the years. You know, you see, you know, the men went and did this, the men went and did that. But there's always been, right from the start of the Air Force, since the very beginning, there has always been women in some role or another. And in wartime, women were flying planes. They may not have been flying them into battle, but they were flying them from one place to another, moving them from place to place. They were doing jobs on stations. They were doing all the things that they wanted, that men would otherwise have done if they hadn't have needed them to go and fly the planes or whatever else. So I think they've been very much undervalued, and this year, with it being the 100th anniversary of women, I think it's important that their contribution, our contribution, is recognised.